Oh boy, look at that, eh? Lego actually following through with the video that he said he was going to make? This must be a Christmas miracle, folks. Yes, it is true that the Vancouver Canucks and some of the other teams that I like to talk about here, they've had so many extra pieces of news that this video topic that we'll be diving into in this commentary has been pushed to the back burner. But I'm thinking about it like this. It's a Saturday afternoon. No radio programs are going out there and talking about updates and scoops. We don't have another Stanley Cup final game until Monday. There's a little bit of breathing room here. So what better way to use our final Saturday video slot than to dive into some of the news that we had missed over the past few days? Because I wanted to talk about some Vancouver Canucks trade targets in this video. Targets that have been confirmed to have actually been captivated by the Vancouver Canucks. We're going to go over onto Canucks News Summaries Twitter account because they have all the summaries that we need to go out there and look at. Big shout out over to Canucks News Summaries. They are a fantastic Twitter account. But starting out with the news from June 4, let's go over onto Donnie and Dolly in a video where they talked about Derek Forbort. This was summarized by Canucks News Summaries, and there's a very particular segment at the bottom of the video graphic that I wanted to talk about. The Vancouver Canucks are interested in Bowen Byram. There's a lot of trade talk out of the draft combine, as talked about on the Donnie and Dolly show. They don't think, though, that the Vancouver Canucks are done. There are a lot of teams calling on Bowen Byram. And they wouldn't be surprised if the Canucks were checking in on Byram too. A lot of Western Conference teams are in on him. The suggestion here is that the Canucks could get Bowen Byram as protection just in case Quinn Hughes walks. And it turns out the Canucks also tried to get Byram earlier in the season in a JT Miller trade. A lot of guys want out of Buffalo right now, and the quote from Dolly reads, "This regime loves Bowen Byram." So, that's a name that I think a lot of Canucks fans can sink their teeth into here. It's a conversation that I think has been sort of prevalent the past few weeks and months, especially here on this YouTube channel. I kind of alluded to the idea of Bowen Byram being a Canucks target multiple times. Not necessarily because the Canucks need left-handed D, but because Bowen Byram just happens to be a really good one. Now, I know, really good one. That could be debated amongst Buffalo Sabres fans. Many would argue saying that, okay, yeah, Byram looked good when he was playing with Rasmus Dahlin, but when he wasn't with Rasmus Dahlin, there were some question marks. And honestly, I think when Dahlin wasn't in the lineup, that might have been when Byram played some of his best hockey, but ultimately, it's kind of a never-ending loop of arguments and counterpoints among Sabres fans to define whether or not Bowen Byram is really good enough to justify whatever contract he is going to get next, because he doesn't have a contract right now. He's from Cranbrook, BC, 23 years old, and as a former Vancouver Giant who once had top 2 potential in the NHL, I still think there's a lot to like out of Bowen Byram in his game. Best case scenario, you're looking at a number 1 defenseman. I don't think he's likely going to attain that status anymore based off of the way his first few years in the league have gone. I think maybe he's a lot more likely to max out as just a very solid number 2 or a top-of-the-line number 3. But if he proves me wrong and he becomes a number 1, then hey, feel free to do that, Bowen Byram. I will not stop you, especially if that's with the Vancouver Canucks. If the Canucks went out there and acquired Byram, they would need to move some other guys around because you'd have Hughes, DPD, MPD, Forbort, and Byram. That would be 5 left-handed guys on the D-core. So 2 of them are going to have to move over onto the right side unless you wanted to scratch one of them on any given night. And the right side is kind of looking packed too with Mancini, Villander, Hronik, and Myers. So lots of defensemen in the Vancouver Canucks organization that are worth thinking about and putting into the lineup. The question is whether or not any of them are expendable enough to the point that you would want to get a Bowen Byram to come in. However, it's not going to be cheap. From the way everything is looking right here, a lot of these Sabres guys could be wanting out, and a lot of teams could be trying to go bargain bin hunting for these Buffalo players. If there are a whole bunch of Canadian teams in on Bowen Byram, the Vancouver Canucks might need to try to outbid another team or two to get this type of a move done. I personally would love to see the Cranbrook, BC native in Vancouver once again, but I digress. He is one name of many, and he's playing a position that the Vancouver Canucks may not necessarily need too much support on. If Quinn Hughes leaves, then okay, grab Bowen Byram, let him run it out, and he'll be the number one defenseman, but for right now, Quinn Hughes is still in Vancouver, so we will just cross our fingers and hope that that continues to be the case. Let's talk about another name that the Vancouver Canucks have confirmed interest in, though. This was a Sportsnet 650 radio hit done by Jamie Dodd and Thomas Drance, where they were joined by Michael Russo, who primarily covers the Minnesota Wild beat. Canucks News Summaries went out there and summarized this very same radio hit, saying this: Michael Russo has heard from really good sources that the Vancouver Canucks really like Marco Rossi, and they are really interested in him. Russo calls Rossi a tremendous player. Wild fans are confused how a team that has developed 3 top 6 centers in their history are now looking to trade one of them. But this is kind of the reason why Bill Guerin doesn't believe that Rossi can be successful in the playoffs. He's undersized at 5'9", but he doesn't lack any courage. Rossi gets all his shots and goals from in the dirty areas despite being 5'9", and he also turned down a 5-year, $5 million AAV contract in January or February, and the Wild countered with a shorter-term deal. Rossi also will not sign a bridge contract with the Wild because he's worried he'll get buried in the lineup. What he wants, though, is Matt Boldy-type money. 7 years by $7 million a season. Whoever acquires Rossi knows that they will have to pay him, whether that's a bridge deal or a long-term deal. There's a lot of pressure on the Wild to get a good package back, and Russo finally, he believes, that Rossi will be traded by the end of the month. So, around the draft, right before free agency, that seems to be the sweet spot as to when it is Marco Rossi will potentially get moved. And this is interesting because as we've been talking about over the past few videos, Rossi was a total stud of a hockey player back when he was drafted in 2020. The number 1 point producer in the entire CHL as a draft eligible, scoring over 2 points a game as a center in the OHL. The only reason he didn't go top 2 or top 3 is because he's 5'9". He went 9th overall to Minnesota. The next few years, Rossi almost died due to complications with long COVID, but inevitably bounced back and became a 60-point in 82-game guy with the Minnesota Wild this year. This all culminates with him getting placed further down in the lineup and not being given much ice time in the Stanley Cup Playoffs against Vegas. He was having some 9-minute games, some 10-minute games. He was not being played much as the Wild got eliminated in 6 games. And ultimately now, Rossi is in a pretty difficult spot because he wants to sign for a pretty big, beefy deal. You can say that he is worth the money. The Wild don't think so. The Wild don't think this is a guy who can win in the playoffs because he's too small, even though he is a player who primarily gets a lot of his offense done in that crease area with net front presence goals and being able to squeak into those tighter areas of the ice. He also does have a really good playmaking edge. He's got soft hands and a great vision to find his teammates. There's a lot to love out of Marco Rossi's game. And Michael Russo here is saying that the Vancouver Canucks are one of the teams that are really interested in this guy. Look, if the Vancouver Canucks grabbed Marco Rossi to be a second-line center behind Elias Pettersson, I think there is a very decent chance, maybe like a 20-30% chance that Rossi is able to overtake Elias Pettersson and become even a number 1 center for the Canucks. That is, of course, assuming they acquire him. It's not guaranteed that happens, but I do think there's a lot to like out of Rossi and his profile. I'm a very big fan of this guy. Maybe I'm just biased because I remember what he had done with the 67s back in 2020. But either way, the Canucks, they seem to like him too. Whether or not the Canucks are willing to pay this guy money, like 7x7, remains to be seen. But for now, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Byram and Rossi? 2 guys that the Vancouver Canucks do have interest in. Let me know in the comments, who do you think it is the Canucks should trade for? What do you think is the price? And do you think this kind of a move could get done? Let me know your opinions in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this British Ashroll sign on. And bye.